Welcome to this tutorial on how to set up a full environment for graphics and animation using MakeHuman and Blender. My name is Joel Palmius and I have been responsible for the MakeHuman server infrastructure, things such as website, forums and build servers for the last 7 or so years. People who have followed MakeHuman will recognize me as Joel Pal from the forum. The outline for this tutorial is that I will demonstrate how to install MakeHuman from Mercurial rather than from a frozen zip. I will further demonstrate how to set up and configure other relevant tools for the environment. It should be noted that everything in this tutorial presupposes Windows. However, contrary to popular opinion, things are a lot easier on Linux, where these things are largely a question of apt-getting the required software. So who would be interested in all this? The purpose of making an install of this type mainly boils down to flexibility and control. Using this approach, you have full access to all code and all assets. Further, you can easily upgrade to the latest version of MakeHuman simply by right-clicking a directory, rather than having to re-download and install all over again. However, there are also some downsides. The first obvious barrier is that it takes a while to install all the dependencies. Further, it's important to note that if you have software requiring another version of Python or PyQt, you risk breaking that software. Further, in the zip, all assets are pre-processed to make startup faster. In most cases, this speed difference will not be noticeable, but on slow machines it might be an issue. So, let's start by kicking up a web browser. As you can see here, I have navigated to archive.makehuman.org/alternate. In the best of worlds, you should find a link to this site adjacent to the tutorial video. Here you will find a zip which conveniently contains all required dependencies for running MakeHuman from source. So we simply click the link and download. We might as well open it once it has finished downloading. The zip contains a directory containing all the dependencies that are needed. We need to extract this, so I will simply copy it to my desktop. With the files extracted, we can double-click the directory to find what we need. In the archive, you will find a README, which you should probably spend some time reading. You will also find license info, which I guess you might not pay as close attention to, although doing so would be good for your soul. In the archive, you will also find 3 directories. In the first are things which you absolutely need in order to run MakeHuman. In the second, there are things which are very convenient. In the third are things which you will most likely not want to install. They are mainly related to packaging MakeHuman for distribution. Amongst the required dependencies we find Python, which, in case you didn't know it, is the programming language in which MakeHuman is written. NumPy is a library for mathematical operations which are needed for calculating mesh transformations in MakeHuman. PyOpenGL is a library used for drawing 3D objects on the screen, and PyQt is a library for making user interfaces. We begin by installing Python. Nothing fancy is needed here, just click Next on most options. However, we will want to add Python to the path. It takes a while. Next we install NumPy. Nothing fancy is needed here either, just click Next. Next up is PyOpenGL. Nothing fancy, but we will get some warnings. Just click Next and OK, and it will install. I never understood what these warnings were about anyway. And PyQt, just click Next. Next we will go and find the recommended dependencies. Here all we find is Tortoise HG, which is a Mercurial client. It is what we use to download source code. Here you will find one client which is for 32-bit operating systems and one which is for 64-bit operating systems. Pick the one which suits your system. Same as before, we just click Next, largely ignoring what it says in the dialogues. We don't need to reboot now. All that we do is import icons, which we don't really need. With this we have all dependencies that we need in order to start MakeHuman. However, we still need to download MakeHuman, which is what we will do next. To start with, we open a web browser and navigate to the Bitbucket MakeHuman site. Here you can see the address here, it's bitbucket.org/makehuman/makehuman. We copy the address to the source code repository, minimize the web browser, and create a new directory. You can call it whatever you want. Since we installed Mercurial, we can right-click on it and select Clone. We paste the address to the source code repository and we click Clone. What happens here is that we download the entire source code for MakeHuman. This will take a while. Once finished, we see a window listing the latest changes that happened in the MakeHuman source code. Right now we're not interested in that, so we simply close the window and open a directory that now contains the MakeHuman source code. Here we will find several things, but the actual MakeHuman application is in the MakeHuman subdirectory. Before doing anything else, we want to download assets such as clothes, skins, and other textures. This also takes quite a while. And we now have everything we need in order to start MakeHuman. Note that it is not an exe file, it's a Python file, but simply double click it and it will start MakeHuman application. And we are up and running. We should now click through the tabs to check that everything we expect is there, such as clothes, eyes, teeth, topologies, maybe some skin textures. If these things are missing, something went wrong. If the tabs are empty or simply do not exist, you can open the README file where you will find the troubleshooting section. I will not go into this here, I will simply expect that everything worked as expected. With MakeHuman installed, it's now time to install Blender. If you do not plan to use Blender, you can stop following the tutorial now. Otherwise, download an installer which is suitable for your system. Nothing advanced happens here either, just click Next on everything. And we might as well run Blender to see that it works, and it seems that it did. Now for doing something actually useful. We will start with trying to export a character from MakeHuman in order to import it into Blender. We will want to select a rig in order to be able to control the character once inside Blender. We can choose any of these, but we will pick the unit one for mechanism animations. And then we go to the Files tab in order to export the model. There are several formats, but we will choose the Collada one for this example. Just enter any kind of name and click Export. We switch back to Blender, and in order to import the model, import Collada. The exports end up under My Documents, depending on what it's called on your system. And we file just a test export and double click it. And you can see that a small guy appeared inside the cube, so we remove the cube and zoom in a bit. Just to demonstrate that you can control the character, select the rig inside the body, switch to quad view, switch to pose mode, select one of the bones, rotate it a bit, rotate another bone, switch to solid mode, and rotate a bit, and it was controlled. The next order of business is installing a few utility scripts for Blender from the MakeHuman directory. We will not actually go into the use of these tools, but we will install them anyway. You will most likely want them. So we copy them, and we go to the Blender installation directory. We find the add-ons directory and the scripts, and simply paste the scripts in this directory. Inside Blender we will need to perform a few configuration operations, so we enter the user preferences screen. Some tools need to be auto-executed when started, so we check this checkbox. In order to actually enable the tools that we copied, we go to the add-on screen and click the testing tab. All of the tools have make in the name, so we write this here to filter. We can expand them to read a bit more about them. Otherwise, we simply enable the ones that we want by clicking in the checkbox to the right. Make target is a dependency for make clothes. Note that I am specifically not enabling MHX1 since we are going to download MHX2. As you saw in the export demonstration, it is perfectly possible to move characters between MakeHuman and Blender using only standard formats such as Collada. However, if you are going to work with Blender, you will most likely want to also download a plugin for an exchange format which is specifically made for tying together MakeHuman and Blender. This adds a few benefits which we will soon be able to demonstrate. MHX is distributed separately from MakeHuman and Blender. You can find it by googling for MHX and the Bitbucket. It is distributed from Bitbucket. Since it's reachable via Mercurial, we do in the same way as we did with the MakeHuman source code. We copy the clone link, we create a new directory, we choose clone, and paste the clone link and click clone. Simply ignore the changes window. In the directory we now have two plugins, one which is for MakeHuman and one which is for Blender. We start with copying the one which is for MakeHuman. Go to the MakeHuman directory, find the plugins directory, and we paste it. Then we go back to the MHX directory, we copy the plugin which is for Blender, and we go to the Blender directory, and we paste it in the add-ons directory. We need to enable the new plugin, so we go to the user preferences screen, enter MHX. Be sure to not enable MHX1, we need the second one. We save the preferences. We should now find MHX in the import menu. And there it is. After having restarted MakeHuman, we can now make a second export. I will make a woman this time. Just drag some random sliders. Doesn't matter a whole lot. Let's pick the ones which are important. Some clothes is always useful. Maybe some hair. We can enable one of the proxies if we want to, but we will skip that now. Eyelashes are useful. And we want slightly better skin than the default one. Having done this, we go to the Exports tab again. We now find MHX as one of the options, so we check that. Just enter some random name. And we click Export. MHX tends to take quite a lot longer than the other exports. Don't worry about it, just wait it out. We switch back to Blender, and in the import menu we find MHX. There are some options which are interesting here. It's important that you click Override Exported Data. I will simply pick some of the options I think are important here right now. You can play around with them later. We will want to pick a rig. I will pick the MHX one here, it has some benefits. And now we can go and find our model. It is in the same place as before in the MakeHuman directory under My Documents. And we pick it and import. And we have a model. I'll just add a light source here so we can render it. Beautiful. Seems I forgot to choose, but never mind. So why did we go through all that bother? As we can see, we have a model with a rig same as before. However, the interesting part with MHX is the MHX panel, which you can find in the left part of the window. Find MHX runtime here. Here you can find things such as switching the visibility of clothes, shape keys, and the most interesting thing, the IK rig. So we enable IK on everything here, go to post mode, and as you can see we have a full IK rig. This largely concludes the tutorial. You now have everything you need for moving characters from MakeHuman to Blender and for working effectively with them there. Before we end, I'll just demonstrate the nifty thing with having cloned a source snapshot. Now let's assume some time has passed and there are new features we want in MakeHuman. Now we can go to Tortoise AG and simply update. We check every checkbox that is available and we click update. Now this was too soon in order for there to actually be any changes, but if there were changes, these would have now been downloaded and added to the existing MakeHuman directory. Apart from source code changes, there might also be new assets, such as new clothes. In order to download those, just double-click Download Assets again. It will only fetch those assets which are new, so you don't have to download everything again. We will skip that for now since nothing has happened. Anyway, that concludes the tutorial. Thank you for having patience with me and good luck with your future characters.